Fed just flipped with now Powell discussing possible rate cuts in September. But the question is the economy so weak that it's not going to matter?
I know. So, do you think this is Trump?
No.
No, I don't know. I don't know. He's saying it's not, but let's dig in a little bit more. Let's talk about his message at Jackson Hole, because that everybody was hanging on that last week, right?
Yeah, Jerry, if you can pull up clip one, Powell said, nonetheless, with policy and restrictive territory, the baseline outlook and the shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance. And then he starts to focus on the labor market. So he says, while the labor market appears to be in balance, it's a curious kind of balance that results from a market slowing in both the supply and demand for workers. This unusual situation suggests that downside risks to employment are rising. And if those risks materialize, they can do so quickly.
I see he didn't use the word AI.
Well, so I actually was thinking that. So, Ken, you always talk about AI and it gets annoying, but I am going to tell you that I do agree with you on this is that I do think Powell is weighing in on AI because he said there's no supply or demand for workers. And so it's kind of getting hit from both sides. So the job market is in unforeseen.
They're out of touch, man. I don't know. I have friends in the field. You have friends in the field. The employment market is not good right now.
It's not.
Right? I mean, maybe it is in some areas, guys, but it's moving fast, and I think it's way worse than it's being reported personally. But before we get into that, let's talk about. I think, when Powell used the word restrictive territory, we dug a little bit deeper, and so I want to point out to what that actually means. There's a point in the economy where the Fed considers things neutral, and I think this is important. So the neutral rate it's like cruise control on your car. What it basically means is that the economy is just cruising along at a good spot. So it's neither stimulative or restrictive, and that's an important thing to understand. That's the neutral rate. Now there's all kinds of stuff that can go into the neutral rate, but it's important to understand that the Fed is looking at that. So when Powell said twice in his statement, restrictive territory, what he's really saying is that it's above neutral. That's what he's saying. And when it's below neutral, it's called accommodative. So when you hear him say accommodative, that's below neutral. When you hear him say restrictive, that's above neutral. Now, I do understand that neutral can change, and there's all kinds of stuff around neutral. But that's what he's saying. What he's saying is that right now, the economy is slowing. This is not what Trump wants, right? And I think it's just important that you understand what they're looking at. So there's 19 board of governors, or I'm sure that's not exactly right. There's 7 board of governors and 12 board members, so there's 19 people. What's interesting is if you look at the dot plot, which is kind of a projection forward of how everybody's voting, how everybody's thinking, and this is why, like it or not, the Fed board is political because of the people's stances on the board. And so just like in government. And so what we really have is we have 10 participants of the 19 that expect 2 cuts by year end. And Danille's going to get into this more. But then we also have 9 that expect fewer or no cuts. So really, the board is not split on a cut, but they're split on whether there's 2 cuts or more. They're almost 50-50. So it's going to be really, really interesting going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's opening the door to the September cut. But as we're seeing on the dot plot as well, it's not a for sure thing. So he's basically going to look at the data as it comes in September to make that decision. And as you can see, the members are really split on what to do. But if you look at, the big banks and what they're predicting, which is important, JP Morgan thinks there's going to be 4 cuts. by the end of the year, while Goldman Sachs is even more aggressive. They see, it up to 5.
Yeah, I don't know, guys.
Yeah.
There's nothing anywhere. I was trying to figure that out. Like, why would well, as you guys probably may know, there's 12 regional positions on the open market committee for the Fed. And of course, they're seated by bank presidents. So there's 12 bank presidents. So if
Mhm.
you're a bank president, you kind of have to say that. It's kind of back when they called it transitory, I guess.
The inflation.
Yeah, yeah. Like, so, you have to be optimistic, right? Because what's going to grow your bank are going to be these rate cuts. You're going to have car loans, and you're going to have home loans, and you're going to have cash out refinances, and you're going to have lines of credit and HELOCs and all the stuff that we get that will hopefully stimulate the economy again. That's why I didn't understand. They came out super aggressive, very different from Powell, where he said restrictive territory.
Right. So you have Powell kind of saying restrictive territory. The banks are saying we need to move quick on this and make additional cuts because obviously that's what's good for them. Just like our lender Matt that we love always says
Yeah,
that there's going to be rate cuts,
we
and he
get texts
has
from him
been.
every single time. But that's why I like this neutral rate, because if you're cruising down the road, and let's call the neutral rate your cruise control on your car. Powell considers, let's say you're at 55 miles an hour, and that's your neutral rate. Powell's saying restrictive is below that. So that's you basically going 50 miles an hour when you can go 55. So he's a little bit below. When you actually move it above that, where you guys start speeding, then that's called accommodative, and he's not there yet. So what's happening is the banks are actually saying it should be here, and they're more aligned with Trump. Now, obviously, we're in the real estate business. We would love to see lower rates. But I think practically, if the open market committee looks kind of split, um, we might get 1 to 2 rate cuts this year, and that's kind of where I sit on the whole thing.
So I think that there'll be a rate cut each time they meet. So what do they meet? They meet 2 or 3 more times before the end of the
Yep.
year. I do think it'll just be quarter point. I think they're going to kind of see how that goes and make sure that it doesn't trigger inflation too much. Optimist on YouTube brings up a good point. They said, I'm confused about if the job numbers are to be trusted
Yeah,
before major revisions. And now Trump may put in his own labor statistician.
that's a heck of a point right
Yeah.
there. Like as you guys know, he fired the BLS, and I probably should know this, but I can't remember if he replaced him already. But I will say, you guys know, in the May and June numbers were so off, right? I think they were adjusted by 253,000 jobs. So something had to change over there. Now, I do think we need accurate numbers.
Well, we used to take, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, a different way, right? It used to be more on surveys. Now it's all projection models. And as you guys know, that obviously can get messed with pretty easily. But there does have to be a way where you can combine some of that technology with back to the basics. Like if you start a new business, they just assume you hire X amount of people. Like they don't even that's just part of that projection model where a lot of new startups they're AI driven. So they're not even hiring that many people. So there is a lot of fudging in these job numbers, and the job market is really bad if you don't have a job. And I know Intel just announced today that they're cutting 20% of their workforce because of AI. I think you're going to see a lot of this. And so we do need those accurate job numbers to really understand what's happening.
Right. And guys, like AI, I have good friends in the legal business, like some of you might even be in that business. And they've said paralegals are basically pretty much out. And anything that's kind of cut and paste, like operating agreements or PPMs, private placement memorandums, and those kinds of things. We all know you can get that stuff pretty reasonably. I'm not saying that you shouldn't send them to an attorney, but I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff that we used to do initially. I would get something, I would send it to the attorney right away. Now we can run it through AI, ChatGPT, or some of the others, and at least send it to them and say, what do you think? So now we're having a conversation, and it just cuts down a lot of steps. That's certainly one. Accounting's another one. Marketing, marketing's in big trouble, in my opinion. I have a lot of friends in the PR advertising business. um, graphics, content writing, that kind of stuff. Logos. Just think of all the things that you can do now. And so if you're in the way of that, I have family in that business that's been personally affected, and in big positions. And I have one particular person in mind that cannot find a job for the life of him because he was so far up the chain. He was making pretty good money, and he can't find a like for like position.
Yeah, so let's discuss, if the rates do get cut in the next, in September, what that could do for housing, what it will do for housing, what it might do for housing prices. So, if these rates do get cut, I don't know about just one time, but if we do see these continuous cuts that JP Morgan and Goldman are talking about, one thing you're going to have is you're going to have a huge spike in refis, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things. One, there's an optics to this, right? Like if people start to see cuts, then everybody gets excited, right? They start to dust off whatever, they've been on the shelf, right? So people like Matt will be texting the heck out of us. This is the beginning of a run, so that's good, right? So title companies, realtors, mortgage companies, all the folks that have kind of had been stalled in the last couple of years. That's all good. I think it's going to affect the lower end of the market more than the higher end of the market. In other words, let's call it over 500 grand. I don't think that a lot of those people are subject to $100 more a month in a mortgage payment, or even 200, right? They're looking for the right property. But
But in defense, is the lower end of the market is what is stalled right now. The upper end of the market is doing pretty good.
right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So what I mean is these rate cuts will actually, I think, should fuel that lower end of the market.
Mhm.
Because let's face it, like whether you guys are buying a car or buying a house, it's your first house. Like my son's buying his first home right now, and he's looking at that monthly payment, right?
Mhm.
Period. That's what he's looking at, more so than the price of the house. So he starts with the price of the house, then he backs down to the monthly payment, right? And
Right.
so most people solve to that monthly payment. Same with a car. And so that little bit of extra will certainly help, I
Yeah,
think, a
absolutely.
lot,
I mean,
right?
a lot of the clients I'm looking at that are first-time home buyers, I mean, we have a cap because of the payment. So when the rate goes down even a little bit, that allows us to get just a little bit more of house.
Right. And I don't think it's going to have a significant difference on, let's say, like the multifamily market, the area that I play in. Again, I'm not saying it doesn't help. Maybe it gives some people some hope, I guess, but that's a really poor strategy. I think, a lot of the folks that thought the rates were going to go down sooner, they haven't. It's just not going to be that much of a game changer.
But here's where it could be a game changer. So, we're hearing a lot, and there's all these YouTube videos we've talked about them saying, oh, refinance or foreclosures are going crazy and people are defaulting on their loans. Well, I don't think that that's true. They might be doubling, but when they're super low, it's really easy to double. But these people that bought in 22, 23 that have 7.5% loans, this could really help them get them in a much more
Yeah,
comfortable territory.
completely agree.
And I think that could actually, make it so they're not going to list their house. Because a lot of what we've been seeing listed recently are people that don't have to sell. But the people that have to sell, almost all of them have bought in the last couple of years and their payment is just too high.
Right.
So if they're able to refinance out of that, then and get even a point lower of a payment, that's going to make them be able to stay in their homes.
Mark my words, this is going to happen. Trump is going to come up with something that's going to target that first time home buyer. You watch. There's going to
Mhm.
be some kind of affordability, some kind of low down payment,
There's a
some kind
million
of a,
things that he wants to do for
yep.
first-time home buyers.
Well, Obama did this, Clinton did
Hmm.
this, Bush did this. This is not unusual. It's not a Trump thing. But there's a lot of people in power that believe that everyone should own a home, and I actually tend to agree with that. I think that a lot of people like my son, they should not be renters for life. Renters should be a stair step. And right now we have a massive problem from affordability.
Well, I think the two things that Trump wants to do that are very interesting when it comes to allowing first-time home buyers into the market is he wants to create that Vantage score, which is
Yeah.
a new type of credit score. And I actually like this idea from what I've looked into it, but it essentially looks at people paying rent, phone bills, utilities, not just credit cards and loan and debt to build your credit score, right? So those that have been renters for, 10 years, that allows them to say, I'll make a mortgage payment because I made a rent payment.
By the way, we know credit score needs to be updated too, guys. Like
Yeah.
we run credit scores for all our tenants. And you guys know people run into problems, right? They have stuff, they fix them sometimes. Sometimes they have medical bills and things like that. So there's always exceptions. These are good people that have short-term issues. So that alone needs to be fixed. And so that this Vantage score could be really, really interesting.
Exactly. And then the other thing is I think Trump will do is the 40-year mortgage. And if the 40-year mortgage comes into play, that obviously is going to push home prices even higher. Think about what loans have done to college, right? I mean, college is only so expensive because you can get a loan. Homes have gotten more expensive because you could do a 30-year set mortgage. You can do a 40-year set mortgage. That's going to really help first-time home buyers, but it's also going to push the prices of houses up as well.
So we saw this in the auto market, right? Like
Mhm.
as you guys know, back when I was younger and Danille was younger, they had 36, 48-month loans for cars, right? And then they went to 60, then they went to 72, then they went to 84. All that really did was keep that monthly payment lower. And so this is just another way to do that. That is certainly something that could happen. Imagine how much better that would be for people if they could lower their monthly payment. Because people like my son, they're solving to a monthly payment. That's where they start. And then they see, okay, so I can buy this with this payment, I can buy a $400,000 house. Maybe with a 40-year amortization, they can buy a $500,000 house. And so that's what Daniil's saying. It won't happen initially, but with lag, it could very easily push the market up again.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's look at house prices in these short and long term. So short term, and we've already seen this. So Optimist mentioned on YouTube, do you think that banks will cut rates in anticipation of these Fed rate cuts? And I said they already have. So rates have went down over a quarter a point in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And what I've seen is home prices are the market's starting to move again, right? So people are getting off the sidelines. They're saying, okay, the Fed's switching their position. Now's the time to buy a house. I'm even telling my clients, you want to do this before rates really start to drop, before there are price increases, right? And so we are seeing that now. We're having a little bit of bidding wars again. Things are moving in a few days versus weeks that have been sitting there. So I think that if the Fed starts to lower rates a quarter of a point, all you're really going to do is you're not going to see prices increase. You're going to see the market moving.
So let's explain what that means because I think that's an excellent point. If rates are coming down, which they seem to be a little bit, what Daniil's saying is when there's this inventory and it's not necessarily a seller's market anymore. It might be a good time to buy because there's lots of inventory and the seller has been sitting there with something that's been on the market a while. Okay, as rates go down, there's going to be more and more buyers, and of course, it's going to flip the script a little bit more. And so now the seller has more options.
Mhm.
And so she's saying, let's take advantage of this window now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because midterm, if rates continue to go down, like JP Morgan thinks, like Goldman thinks, remember, Trump gets his
Yeah,
Fed
May.
chair in there in May.
Yeah.
So, if things start to turn and rates really go down, then I do think you will see price increases. So right now, the price increases don't come from a quarter point or half point drop. But if things start to drop more than a point, of course you're going to see price increases because you're really going to get that affordability
Yeah.
back to a
And
degree.
by the way, do not feel like any urgency around this, right?
Hmm.
Like at all. Like this is not an urgent issue. This is not something you need to go out and do right away at all. There's massive lags here, right?
Hmm.
First, we got to see in September if this even happens, right? Then you got to kind of see what happens after that. You've got plenty of time to sit back and watch this. And if I were in your shoes, I would give yourself the last half of this year to really kind of see, what's going to happen. One thing that is always true is there's always a lot of activity right before the end of the year, moving into that first quarter, right? So just don't feel any urgency.
So did you know what's happening with Lisa Cook on the Fed board at all?
I saw that. Well, yeah, well, by the way, I think these are what 14-year terms or something.
Yeah. Yep. And so basically, she was one of Biden's nominees, and Trump is trying to angle to um, get more of people that want to cut rates, on his
This is
board,
the
right?
point, right?
This is the point. So he does get to pick the chair in May, but there's a lot of these other board members that he can't pick. Well, obviously, she does not want to cut rates, Lisa Cook, and so doing some digging, the Department of Justice found out, she did two of her prime location, for a home mortgages within like 3 months of each
Well,
other.
primary, yeah,
Yeah,
primary
primary.
residence.
Yeah.
This basically means you get a better rate if
Hmm.
you say you're buying from a primary standpoint. And she did, apparently, according to
DOJ.
the DOJ, she did two within a short period of time, which means that's mortgage fraud.
So Trump is trying to get Powell to let her go and fire her. He said he's going to fire her, but he cannot do that. Powell would have to do that. But his new person that he appoints in May could potentially do that. So there is a lot of rumbling where, Trump's trying to get what Trump wants, like he always does. And it'll be very interesting to see.
He's trying to stack the board to
Yeah.
have people that agree with him. That's basically what he's doing. And that's, by the way, that's why I was started with this.
Yeah.
There's 10 that believe there'll be two cuts or more, and there's 9 that don't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a split board right now. And by the way, that's through the end of the year.
Yeah.
So which is 8 and 3, 3-4 months from now, right? And then there's not a lot that goes on, you guys, through Christmas and into the new year. So this is going to be very, very interesting.
But Powell's under a lot of pressure though, because this isn't just even about, this is about his legacy a little bit. This is not even just about the economy and rates and everything else, because so far he's been a lot like Volcker, where he has kept all the rates high, but people are saying that now there's this memes going around on social media that he's going to cave like Burns.
Yeah.
So it matters
You
because
say rates high though, like come on, like Volker's was double digit, right? You can't compare Powell to Volker. I mean, this for me, this is super normal. Like these rates, 5-6%. Gosh, if you can't do real estate deals at 5 or 6%, you should move on. Like everybody's just
well, they're not working.
I know.
Everyone's
That's because the
screaming.
prices jumped. That's because of the low rates. Low rates created this problem. High rates will actually bring it back to earth. I want prices back to earth. But my whole career was based on 5 and 6% interest rates. So I see this economy as extremely normal. If you're new to it in the last 10 years, you think this is high as could be, like this one here. Like she compares it to Volcker.
Here's the
It's
thing.
not Volcker.
Here's the thing. Either rates need to come down.
By the way, I was alive for Volcker. How about you?
Either rates need to come down or prices need to come down, right? Because or it could just stay stagnant like it is. But as far as investors go, you can't invest when rates and prices are this high and make it work.
We're still buying, baby. Like we're finding deals right now.
It's a multifamily space, so it's a little bit different because your real estate is for sale. Ours in the single family is not for sale because people are locked into these very low rates.
Yeah, unless you're in like some of those inventory heavy markets, like some areas of Florida, and Atlanta, and Dallas, and Phoenix.
But even Phoenix, I mean, we're seeing things go. We are not seeing big price decreases in most properties unless somebody has to sell. And we have seen that a couple handfuls of times, but it's not like an ongoing, everybody just needs to sell kind of market.
But days on market does drive prices down. So we're still early on that, in my opinion. Like the days on market last we looked was like 53, and that was a few weeks ago. So as that grows, then it's like the house we bought. The house we bought, the days on market was over 200. Right. And now, granted, the guy started at a high number, which if he would have got it, great, but he didn't. So then he just kept lowering prices. So So days on market matters, and it does affect price on the single family side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sal said that we are crazy because people are losing jobs. And that is a factor, right? Oh, sorry, you said we're clueless. And we do know that people are losing jobs. And that is a big factor on, what could drive the housing market, even if they're cutting rates. So if they're cutting rates and the unemployment numbers are going way up, which we're not seeing yet, but if they are, then that could also affect.
Well, but I also want to give you a contrarian view. So first of all, I think we did in the beginning of this say that job market's hard and people are cutting, and you mentioned Intel, and so there was a bunch that we did discuss around that. But let me tell you what cutting rates does. It helps home builders. It helps the people selling cars. So when the consumer electronics industry, it helps Home Depot. It helps Lowe's. It helps renovations. It helps all that stuff. So now, so it stimulates the economy, which creates jobs. That's the point. And so it's a fine balance. I do understand, but let's don't forget if a home builder is building, there's hundreds of people employed. That's essentially how it works. When we build an apartment building, we have 300 or 400 people on the project every day. And so, it does create jobs. It helps subcontractors. It helps the journeymen, the plumbers, the electricians, the concrete guys, the roofers, the dirt movers, all that stuff as a result of lower rates. The reason there's not a lot of construction right now is because of the higher rates. So let's don't forget about what lower rates do. They stimulate the economy and they create jobs. It
Absolutely.
also creates bubbles. So I'll hand you that. But that's why these next few months are going to be critical for Powell. It'll be very interesting to see where he lands on all this.
Absolutely. So we will chat with you guys next week and weigh in, and we'll see you then.
Adios.